Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2, and a warm welcome to those new participants joining us today, and a thank you to those who are coming back from day 1. Let's get started by inviting our wonderful singers, Shauntelle and Brianna, to start us off this morning. I'll turn it over to you both.
Hi, Squaicho. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. We decided to join up together on one video today. But ACMCI at Nishtalacha, ACMCI at Nishwalakwa, Haichka Siam Nikwilia here. Asa the Echlia, Hinat sa Lakwangan, Hinat sa Namgis Kokakuak, Haichka.
Uklaxish Hukosa Hashwia Soup Sieti Lakwangan Moment Ni Shauntelle. Hello, everyone.
We are the sister duo, and we're just really honored to open up your morning again with a song, which we're going to sing the same song as yesterday morning as a chance for you to sing with us wherever you are. The song again is a woman's honor song. It's made by our uncle Yahweh Lipton Bradley Dick, and you'll hear some of the words in it say Haichka Siam, which is a way for us to say thank you in our Lakwangan language. And then Haichka Sahuan. Sahuan again is the word that we use to honor our matriarchs, the ladies in our lives, the mothers, the aunties, the grandmothers, as well as the young ones that we have that we're raising up, and the ones to come as well, because in our culture it's very important for us to recognize the young ones that are not here yet, but will be. And so we just really honor each and every one of you today, and we hope that you're able to take a little bit of that good medicine, wake up a little, be excited for today, and think of something that you need for yourself and something for someone else. So.
Oh, oh, hey, Oh, oh, why, hey, why, hey, yeah, hey, why, hey,
Hi, Chka. Thank you so much for having us in the virtual format this morning.
Thank you, Brianna and Shauntelle, for energizing us with your beautiful music and opening up day two. And please know we are deeply grateful for your presence, and a gift will be coming your way as a small acknowledgement of creating this wonderful energy to get us going on day two. Thank you once again. And with that beautiful song in our hearts, I'd like to again welcome Elder Roberta to provide us some opening comments for day two. Over to you, Elder Roberta. Elder Roberta, you're on mute.
Still trying to figure out all of this technology. So, Haichka, OCM, Shauntelle, and Brianna, that was so beautiful. I'm so glad that you were both able to be together. And it was, I sang along with you, and really, really honored to be here again for day two. So I'll start now. Thank you, everyone. Haichka, CM, Siaya, greetings and welcome, everyone. As Coast Salish matriarch and elder, I wish to give a very warm thank you to all my relatives on the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh for welcoming me to live in the unceded lands of my relatives, Musqueam, here in Richmond for 40 years now. As Coast Salish matriarch and elder, I wish to give each and every one a very warm welcome who live, work, and play, give and receive service on our unceded, ancestral, and occupied lands of my relatives, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And I respectfully ask each and every one of you to stop and reflect and give thanks to all the ancestors of the lands that you live, work, and play, give and receive service on across this province. Thank you, everyone. So always honoring Elder Vince Stogan and Elder Bob George and their teachings that whenever we come together, we must share a blessing and a prayer for our time together. So I'll start us off in a good way today. OCM. Haichka, OCM, OCM. We give you many, many thanks, Creator, for bringing us together in this wide virtual circle here today. We ask, Creator, that you bless anyone who's away due to illness or other obligations. Bless all the ones to join us during this day and help them to join safely. We call upon you, Creator, to bring your blessings down upon our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our spirits. So when we think our thoughts, they are good, positive, and respectful. When we speak our words, they are good, positive, and respectful. We call upon you, Creator, to bless the food and drink we put in to nourish our bodies on our journeys to wellness and strength. And we give you respectful thanks, Creator, for all the beautiful people who have worked on the front lines during this pandemic to take care of everyone and all the other illnesses as well. Bless and protect them and their families, Creator. We kindly and respectfully ask you, Creator, to cover us each with your warm blanket of protection as we journey through this part of the journey of our lives together. Help us all to keep safe in our travels, both near and far, Creator. And we always give you many, many thanks, Creator, as we ask you to bring all of your blessings down upon the ones that are hurting, the ones that are hungry, the ones without homes, and especially the ones that are hurting, Creator. Haichka, OCM, OCM. Thank you, everyone. OCM.
Thank you, Elder Roberta, for your inspiring prayer to energize us all and to allow us to bring our very best to this second day of our summit. It's truly a privilege to have you with us, and I thank you on behalf of all our participants today. With that prayer from Elder Roberta, I'd like to welcome Kathleen Ross, who is the president of the Doctors of BC. We're delighted to have Kathleen kick off day 2 for us. So Kathleen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I must say that was a really beautiful opening. I really appreciate it. And it is with great honor, enthusiasm, and humility that I welcome you to the second day of the BC Rural First Nations Health Summit.
Kathleen,
I am.
I think you need to turn on your video. There we go. Brilliant.
There. That's that better? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I am, hopefully you could hear me. I am speaking to you this morning from the traditional and unceded lands of the Coquitlam First Nations people here in Coquitlam, where I have lived for the last 57 years. This summit truly has been about the powerful impact of partnership and collaboration in rural health and wellness, and what can be achieved when people work together towards a common goal. Yesterday, Elder Sequoia Wanek shared in her teaching session that energy is always flowing from everything around us and from within us. And I can sense this energy even over this virtual format we're using this year. Doctors of BC and the BC government have long recognized the importance of collaboration in leading and enabling change as we strive to provide optimal patient care and build a stronger healthcare system. No much more so true than during these times of COVID. We know we can actually achieve so much more together than we can as individuals. So this morning, I wanted to touch on 2 related but separate areas in my introductory remarks. The first was to update you on the commitment of Doctors of BC to diversity, inclusion, and cultural change. And the second, to share some of our successes to date in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. 1 year ago, Doctors of BC signed a declaration of commitment, an agreement between BC doctors and First Nations and Indigenous peoples that outlined our commitment to provide culturally safe healthcare services here in BC. This was an intensely touching and emotional ceremony for many of us in attendance, and I believe that it signified a shift in processes long entrenched here in BC. To meet our commitment, we understand that cultural humility within our healthcare system must be present. This is an intentional process built on mutual respect, understanding, and reciprocal accountability, which will in turn help us to create an environment of cultural safety for our First Nations and Indigenous peoples. We deeply value this work, and we are committed to advancing this process. We also know that this is an area that needs improvement. The process of collaboration is a difficult one, time-consuming. Sometimes we're not fully aware of exactly what our colleagues do, and sometimes we don't speak the same language or use the same acronyms. I myself distinctly recall my very first meeting with the health authority, and I asked for a glossary of terms because I didn't understand the message that they were trying to convey any more than they understood mine. Now, I expect through the years, a number of us have heard many stories where cultural safety has not been evident, not only for patients, but actually also for those working in the healthcare system. And this, of course, has been brought to the forefront very recently. These sad revelations are a call to action for us all, a call to do better. At the same time, I'm also hearing more instances where experiences have been more positive. And I truly hope that this reflects a positive change in our collective culture, as I would like us to continue to learn from one another and to move forward. To that end, late last year, Doctors of BC's Board of Directors accepted a barrier assessment report that was based on a year-long consultation with members. It identified our challenges and set out more than 50 recommendations to help us become more diverse in our leadership. We have begun our first phase of the implementation of these recommendations. As our physicians in BC are comprised of many different ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, and so much more, the structures that make up the Doctors of BC must reflect the diversity if we are truly to represent everyone. I recognize that this is not a quick process. However, it will be a thorough one. This process will put us in a better position to address the issues found in our healthcare system today and ensure that it is culturally safe for everyone. Let me move forward to my second point. I was asked to address Doctors of BC's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But to do that, I think we need to understand who we are. Doctors of BC is a professional organization for more than 15,000 physicians, medical students, and residents working in BC. Our vision statement is better together, making a difference for doctors. And while this statement might seem quite lofty or very high level, the meaning and intention behind these words color and drive all the work of our organization. We have gathered together all of the resources at our disposal to tackle this pandemic response, including physician engagement and raising up the physician voice, but also supports for best clinical practice, personal development, collaboration within healthcare management to lead change, and last but not least, advocate for public health and safety. Now, many of you may not remember US Airways Captain Sullenberg or Captain Sully of Miracle on the Hudson fame. However, he stated that everything is unprecedented until it happens for the first time. And these are certainly unprecedented times for the medical profession. Who could have predicted that our behemoth of a healthcare system could pivot on a dime and become so creative and so nimble over such a short period of time? However, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed many gaps in our healthcare system, the inequities, particularly in rural and remote regions of our province. Clinical and technical innovators have stepped forward to meet the evolving personal and clinical protective equipment needs of medical professionals and other frontline workers to stem the spread of the virus and protect us. Doctors of BC has needed to work equally nimbly to completely shift how we deliver care, both to meet patient needs and to minimize the use of our limited personal protective equipment supplies at the peak of the COVID-19 wave 1. At a high level, myself and senior staff from Doctors of BC met regularly with Dr. Henry and her team and leaders from all of the healthcare unions several times a week to ensure that there was input from all sectors and consistency of practice across those sectors. Protection of all first contact providers, and in many cases, last contact providers by our housekeeping and other support staffs was considered, debated, and altered in real time as the pandemic and our supply chain issues evolved. While engaging at that overarching level, we were simultaneously able to provide support and improve knowledge sharing on the ground via our grassroots physician-led organization. Capitalizing on this backbone, which was built collaboratively with our Ministry of Health partners over the last 10 years, we were able to quickly amplify the on-the-ground physician experience, garner cooperation from our Ministry of Health to support issues on patient care to ensure it was the most efficient and safe possible. We heard many examples yesterday of expanded infrastructure, including telehealth, virtual platforms, telephone services, and certainly part of that was a dramatic shift in physician payment models to support these new services. I will note that while many practices across BC were already beginning to implement virtual care, the physician majority was not. Working with our members to develop their office technical capacity and virtual best practices for clinical skills has been a steep uphill climb. Redirecting funding to support such community initiatives as COVID testing centers to redirect patients from the emergency department and ensure that we had surge capacity. Developing innovative technology-based ways of two-way communications to facilitate advanced directives or communication just between patients and their families, including our most vulnerable, elderly, and those struggling with mental health and addictions, has been critical. We have been able to ramp up quickly simulation training for anesthesia, emergency physicians, maternity care, cognitive behavioral therapy via Zoom, all of these things to try and improve our patient care through this time. We worked closely with HealthLink BC and Pathways here in BC, which is a physician online resource directory, to ensure that physicians and other healthcare providers have up-to-date information. And throughout all of this, there has truly been a normalization of the use of digital technology into our regular medical practice. On top of all of this, Doctors of BC played a very critical role in the promotion in the media for physicians to ensure that their patients got the care that they needed. Many patients felt that they did not need to seek physician care, that we were all of us caught up in the management of coronavirus all the time. And there were challenges with physicians accessing care. We now know that we're encouraging our patients to reach out so that we do not see the complications of acute or chronic illness as a result of physicians not accessing care. So as you can see, RCCbc has been extremely busy over the last several months, working with our medical communities, our governing bodies, and all of our partners to come together in an unprecedented, rapid, and nimble fashion to innovate and share our specific knowledge and learnings to allow the co-design and rapid shift in best practices to meet patient needs and protect all frontline providers. I will reiterate that this healthcare crisis will forever change the way we design our healthcare system and indeed how we practice medicine into the future. I have the greatest confidence that innovation, such as the discussions you will have today, will continue to be critical to our success. And I thank you for your hard work and dedication. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Always candid and always challenging and provocative, and also upfront in setting context for day two. And I really do want folks to engage with you today and continue the conversation. So really want to, on behalf of the group, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Great. So with the Kathleen's context piece, welcome back, folks, to day two. Why are we here? We're here to re-engage around the priorities that emerged from your conversations and dialogue yesterday, and continue to deepen the relationships that you started for day two. Obviously, we want you to share your experience, share your perspective, share your wisdom, and learn from each other. And really, if you look at the agenda today, it's about starting to think about designing and delivering those final stages of the appreciative inquiry framework, so that we actually walk away with some clear commitments to pursue actions of a practical nature that we can actually implement after the summit. So the agenda is designed to deepen your conversations, to get you to that stage of looking at what are practical actions you can commit to going forward. As you can tell, we are going to encourage you to take the conversations from yesterday, continue to have really challenging conversations that continue to, I guess, challenge us all. But at the end of the day, it is really about action. So a couple of things I want to just do as housekeeping items is firstly to remind you that there were some issues with our phone line yesterday. As a provincial system, there were some breakdowns, but phone lines are working, and you can contact the phone helpline at any point during the day, or continue to use the info@rccbc.ca if you have any concerns at all coming up, even at the technology level. A couple of things to also remind you about. There will be an opportunity for community tables to continue their work if you choose to do so beyond the summit. And there will be facilitation support from RCCbc if you so desire. We also have a wrap-up report that will capture and curate all the information from the summit, and that will be provided to you after the summit as well. And then just a final piece for panel speakers and presenters. Please, if you can complete the declaration of conflict of interest, if you have not done so, there is a document. We would really appreciate that piece as well. Okay, I think those are all the housekeeping items for the day. And one final thing to remind you about is our Totem Lila healers. They'll still be present today, and you're encouraged to sign up for that experience. So with that in mind, we have one quick evaluation poll, I believe, Tom, that we would like folks to literally take 30 seconds to complete, and then we'll move into a panel piece to get us going this morning. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you to get the evaluation poll up and running. Thank you, Tom. And for folks that are potentially struggling with the agenda for the day, if there's anything that we can do, even at the community tables or the peer tables, please let us know. Okay, on that note, let's move forward. Our first segment this morning is a reflective panel. And what I'm asking you to do is to kind of just listen in to some reflections from some key colleagues and reflect on how those perspectives resonate or don't resonate for you as we start day 2. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ray, to introduce our panel for this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I really appreciate that opportunity. Firstly, just thanks to Elder Roberta, Shauntelle, and Brianna for opening us up and on such a good way and kind of laying such a good foundation for day 2. Thanks to all of you for pitching up again for day 2. That's really encouraging to see the numbers of people that have rejoined us second early morning for another video. Thanks, I'm really kind of grateful for that. And really super excited to kind of introduce this panel, which is a group of 4 people who've been walking this road, among many others, but walking this road in partnership around kind of looking at improving the health of rural patients and communities. So Terri Aldred is a rural family physician bringing the provider perspective. She kind of works out of the RCCbc Family Services, so provides service to those communities up in the north, and also leads the postgraduate Indigenous family practice residencies as a site director. So Terry's going to be joining us, bringing that provider perspective. And then Ted Patterson is the Assistant Deputy Minister of Primary Care. Again, has been walking this road with us through that kind of with a bunch of kind of work that's been happening out of the January 2019 meeting in a very pragmatic and concrete way, as has Fiona Dalton, who's the CEO of Providence Health. Again, kind of heavily involved, especially with some of the virtual stuff that has evolved out of the work of the January, that are kind of one of the tangible kind of concrete things that have come out of the January meeting. And then friend and colleague Dave Snadden, who's the Rural Doctors UBC Chair of Rural Health. And this is probably one of the main reasons why I'm introducing this panel is Dave has been in the role for 5 years now. He's, for me, been a great mentor. And he's been actively involved for way beyond his role in the chair for improving rural health. He's based up in Prince George, has been active in UBC for many, many years. He initially signed on for 5 years, but we managed to persuade him to extend for 3 years, but we managed to persuade him to extend to 5. And today is his last day in the role. So I just wanted to honor that and acknowledge that in particular, Dave, to thank you for that. And thanks for kind of spending your last day in the role with us, with all of us online, and kind of sitting on the panel. So really interested to kind of hear all of the panel's perspectives. Dave is bringing the academic perspective, kind of, and to hear kind of your reflections on the process, the journey we've been on together so far, and also kind of any reflections on kind of the process that we've been kind of engaging in the last day or so. Back over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Ray. And Dave, just imagine 600 people giving you a warm round of applause. So thank you for your contribution. Okay, well, Dave, I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. So Dave, when you think about day 1, what are some key insights that have emerged for you? What's standing out for you from day 1?
Thanks very much, Peter, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, I found yesterday a very interesting day, and what I did was I went to have a look at the thought exchange to see what you were saying as participants in this few days about what the important issues for you were. And the ones that came up for me were around about team-based care, models of care, cultural safety, patient access, and community collaboration. And the theme I saw running through this was about minimizing inequities. I was also able to spend some time with our academic peer group, and it struck me that one of the things in that conversation was, well, what's our role as academics in this, in preparing the next generation of healthcare workers, and are there things we need to be doing there? And that conversation was very much about how do we ensure that in terms of team-based care, we're actually breaking the silos down and getting our learners from different disciplines to actually work together. We don't do that well at the moment, but we could make changes there. I think the other issue is, as someone mentioned, was, you know, we're talking about getting teams to work together in primary care. We've got a tertiary care issue as well. So we need to deal with this right across the spectrum, because rural is also supported by the tertiary care centres, as you all know. And we also kind of thought all healthcare workers need rural experience, because to be quite honest, if you haven't experienced something, you don't understand it. And many of the disconnects we have in the healthcare system are because of that lack of mutual understanding. But what I was really thinking about was, in all of this, the theme running through it was about inequities. And I thought I would turn that on its head, and from what was in the thought exchange, think about, how do we get to equity? You know, if we have an end in mind, what does that end in mind look like? And what I took from what you put out there was, we can look for equity and access. And that would be through longitudinal care, through telehealth. We're doing that already. And also through emergency transport. These are themes which we've been working on for the last couple of years, which suddenly, as Kathleen Ross mentioned, COVID has accelerated. The other thing I'm hearing is the importance of equity in relationships and support. This is about cultural humility, about true patient-centered care, where we're working with each other, about how teams work together, and also around how communities are involved in the system. And I'll come back to that. The other equity thing is keeping the end in mind. How do we achieve equity in education? In other words, who gets to be a healthcare worker? How do they get rural experiences? And how do we help the tertiary care centres through education understand how to work with rural areas better? The other thing that really struck me is quite interesting in the thought exchange was around equity and resources. And you know, we've now had some announcements about increasing resources for emergency transport. We also have routine transport. You know, what happens when people end up in an emergency room and get discharged at 3 in the morning and they're 500 kilometers from their home, and what happens there? But one of the things that really struck me was that a lot of people, communities and physicians and others, are all saying the fee-for-service funding model's outdated and we need to rethink this. And I thought that's a very strong theme running through your feedback. And the other one we mustn't forget in looking for equity of resources is we're talking about telehealth. There are many people who can't access. They don't have the equipment and they don't have the bandwidth. So there are infrastructure things we also need to deal with as a province. So it struck me that as we think about equity, the other issue is, how do we help rural communities work together to solve their own problems, but within an overarching provincial framework? I think the best decisions are ones that are made locally and where people work together, because they know what their issues are and they know how they can begin to address them. But I think also it has to be within a framework where everybody's kind of trying to get to the same place. So I'm thinking that if we keep the end in mind, we can get there by working together and developing better healthcare in rural BC with a focus on wellness. So let's not think about inequities. Let's think about how we get to equity.
Thanks, Dave. Lots there to get us started. Terri, with that from Dave, why don't you jump in, please?
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Dave, for that. Like Dave, I looked at the thought exchange, and I think the thing that jumped out at me first was that cultural safety and care models were actually rated the most high. And I think there is considerable overlap when we look at cultural safety and care models, as our conventional care models do not necessarily support equity or justice when we're looking at how care is delivered in areas where people tend to be more marginalized. So whether or not we're looking at rural remote, looking at inner city care, care with people who have addictions, and that sort of thing. And so I think that that was very interesting to me. The cultural safety was rated as the rated second high in themes. And when we were looking through the top themes, the things that kind of jumped out at me was people really talked about needing to increase their relationships with First Nations. And this is congruent with the 5 R's when we're looking at building ethical space. And so those are building relationship, reciprocity, responsibility, respect, and reconciliation. And currently in our current climate, when we're looking at the largest civil rights movement in recorded history and publicly open public conversations about anti-Indigenous racism, I think it's important to mention that truth needs to come before reconciliation. So we need to hear these stories and before we can make right, before we can move into that equity lens. And from there, many people talked about bringing First Nations to the table so that they can define what care means to them and what the metrics that they care most about are. And to me, this was very inspiring because, you know, in order to provide good care, it should be defined by the people receiving it. And truly, when we're looking at what is a good definition of cultural safety is really defined by the people receiving care. And so looking at that, how can we go forward to ensure that we are actually collecting that data, that we can actually say, this is what the population we're serving defines as culturally safe care. This is what they define as good care. And what are their metrics of success, and actually collect them and be able to communicate that information back to them. And when we're looking at the current climate, one of my call to actions for this group would be looking at that we're in the, you know, we're looking at this huge civil rights movement, this public anti-Indigenous racism. How can we use this moment in history to be a springboard for equity, to ensure that, you know, just as Dr. Ross mentioned, how the whole behemoth healthcare system changed on a dime for COVID, how can we use that same momentum to address this issue, to address racism in medicine, to address cultural safety and humility? Because we proved that it was possible just, you know, currently with COVID, but just a short couple months ago. And so I think we can do it again. And the last thing I'd share is around provider well-being, which was a theme that had come up. And for me, this is something that I feel passionately about because from teachings from my elders, we were taught that healers traditionally were people who were brought up and trained to be healers from a young age. And that wasn't so that they could learn to heal others at a young age. It was so that they could become healthy and well themselves, so that they knew who they were, that they were grounded and rooted, as the teachings from Elder Roberta and Sequoia taught yesterday. And when you're strong and rooted, you spread your wellness. And so you become a healer because you're well and you spread that. And so when we're not well, we're taught that we spread our unwellness. And to me, this teaching really speaks to some of the hurt that we see in our current healthcare system. So I was really heartened to see that provider well-being was something that was discussed, and I think it's important in this conversation. Thank you.
Wow, so much texture in your remarks there, Terri, and loved your perspective around to be a healer, you need to spread your wellness. With that, let me turn it over to Ted.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'd have to take a moment. I was actually struck by that comment as well about if you're well, spreading wellness. Remarkable insight. You know, the insight I'll share maybe a little bit different. The discussions I participated in, I heard some things that I probably heard before, and I think the value was hearing them from people I wouldn't normally hear them from. But the insight I wanted to share, a reflection, was about this event, about this forum. To be honest with you, I've spent most of my career, my life, participating in, back to university, learning about the value of public discourse, proper public and political discourse, and what that looks like. The notion of the commons, a gathering place for people to be able to discuss issues of substance and of importance. And I've learned a lot about the kind of prerequisites for a healthy public discourse, people sharing in dialogue, and you know, the trust, the respect, the recognition of people as our moral equivalents and with good intention, that's required in order to have these types of healthy dialogues, and the fruits of dialogue that you know, I guess I'm a Socratic at heart, that's through dialogue that we spark insights, ideas that light into flame that become other things. You know, and so I've spent a lot of my life reflecting on that, and it's apparent to me the contrast between healthy and I guess unhealthy dialogue. You know, I participated in the event yesterday, and then I had the opportunity to participate in another event, you know, into the early evening, I would say, and it really highlighted for me the importance of healthy discourse and the opportunity in creating this space, the safe space for people to be able to talk about issues of importance. And these are, you know, critically important issues, the ideas of the healthcare system, cultural safety. There's very little that's probably more important than that. You know, so this group, this event, truly is a reflection, from my perspective, of what a healthy discourse needs to look like. Building the space for people to participate, to challenge, to have hard conversations in a healthy way. We don't have to agree about everything, and there may not be consensus, but we're at least able to get ideas on the table. I look at the participant list. I should check it again. There's over 550 people that are signed on right now. That is amazing. I don't go to too many conferences in person where there are 500 people participating. So the opportunity that this provides, I'm truly impressed. The logos that I saw, RCC, First Nations Health Authority, all the joint committees, NNPBC, the Academic Health Science Network, you know, it's fantastic, and I truly appreciate it. But then, of course, the talking part is great, but we've got to translate that into decisions, into actions and improvements for our health system, because that's ultimately what this is about, is improving the healthcare system. The pentagram partnership table, as we call it, you know, that has been convening for more than a year and having discussions, and I'm quite privileged to be a participant in those discussions. I think through that group and through events like this, we have started taking steps and has translated into action. And I think that is the result of the trust that's been built through these events, the respect for one another and what we're trying to do. Our discussions allow me to see, as Ted from the Ministry of Health, the practical consequences of the decisions we make in local communities. And I think one of the most striking examples, we provided some funding. There have been a number of things that have happened during COVID to support the Virtual Doctor of the Day program and a number of other virtual initiatives. There's also the rural framework that's arisen through this process. You know, Ray sent me a note about an anonymized, obviously, example of benefit to a patient in a rural community. I think it was on a Friday night, a child presenting with complications from leukemia, and said, this is the result of the trust that you've shown us by enabling our initiative to move forward. That means more to me and my staff and people working here than anything else. So I just wanted to highlight that because I really truly believe that this event, these discussions, again, I won't go into details about the one I had last night, but in contrast, you know, it demonstrates we built that trust. And I've got lots of other examples where we haven't built the trust. We haven't done the hard work to have a healthy dialogue and discussion. So that probably is the biggest takeaway for me. Elder Roberta, Shauntelle, and Brianna, and a number of others have mentioned energy this morning, and Terri mentioned, you know, if we're well, we spread our wellness. I truly believe that the energy that we bring to these discussions, our approach, really has a tremendous impact and influence on the outcome of the discussion. So it's important to bring the right energy, and I appreciate this event, and I appreciate the people participating for bringing the right energy, even in difficult conversations. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Ted. Really appreciate you reinforcing that the power of productive discourse comes from that foundation of trust. Thank you for that. Fiona, I know you're on vacation, and really want to thank you on behalf of everybody for taking time out of your vacation to be here. Even though you were not at day one, you know, you do bring a tremendous insight. So curious to kind of hear what's resonating for you, or what you're most you know, curious about it from your perspective. Fiona, you're on mute right now.
Thanks very much. Yeah, this is my vacation get-up, and I'm grateful to be here on the Wee-Wai-Kum First Nation land. And I was kind of reflecting on why I'm part of this. I'm here today because I'm pretty good normally at kind of blocking off my vacation and going, no, can't do that, I'm on holiday. And the reason I said yes to this is that the relationships that I have been built over the last year and a half through this process. And it's been a really different process for me. It's not something I've been used to. I'm much more used to kind of task-based, right, yeah, got to get these 5 things done, who's doing it? And actually this has been a process, it feels to me, of creating a community and almost creating a kind of a virtual village, to the point that when now, if Ray or anyone else who's been part of it says to me, can you do this this speaking bit, Fiona? I'd kind of go, well, yes, how can I do it? And I think there is something that's really kind of powerful to me in that, of how do we all create relationships based on trust, and based on that we genuinely want to work with each other, help each other out, and we'll go out of our way to do that. And I think that if we can build those relationships across all of our healthcare systems, then we can get across so many different other challenges. But if I go a kind of level down below that and go, so why have I been part of this, this collaborative process over the last year and a half? I start off, I think, not being a natural person to be part of that, in that I'm the CEO of Providence. We run St Paul's Hospital, Mount St Joseph, Holy Family, other long-term care facilities. I'm not accountable for rural and remote healthcare, and specifically I have no authority over it. Actually, of course, that's probably the most helpful thing in terms of what we do is we just come here as a partner to say, how can we help, how can we learn? We do look after lots of people who do come from all over the province, both rural and remote areas. And our values are around social justice, compassion and innovation. And so the social justice in terms of the equity of access and of care, regardless of who you are and where you come from, speaks really loudly to me. And I think most importantly, I and the team that I represent just want to be better. And if by learning and being part of this and supporting indeed other people to be better, we can collectively provide better care for those British Columbians who live in the most rural and remote areas, and particularly those from First Nations communities, then that's an incredibly rewarding thing to do. And that's why we are really, and I personally am really excited to be part of this ongoing process. When I wasn't part of the conference yesterday, but when I looked at the word cloud and the thoughts, that's what it seemed to me to be saying. People being really grateful for this community, to be really saying, how do we continue to build these relationships that have been forged stronger over the last 3 months, but how do we then take those relationships to tackle some of the more tricky issues? And clearly the fee-for-service model came up again and again. But I think that once we have strong relationships, we can tackle the harder issues as well as the easier issues. So that's what I wanted to say, and just to conclude by saying thank you again for inviting me and enabling me to be part of this actually really inspiring journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Dave, if I can come back to you, when you listen to your fellow panelists speak, anything that surprises you or anything that you're really quite challenged about?
I think more heartened, because I think so much of what has happened is based on relationships, and those communities working together who have equitable relationships within the communities are the ones that get stuff done. And I think the more we get to know each other, and it's been a great privilege for me to work with Ted and Terri and Fiona. And because we're beginning to get to know each other, all of us, and we're beginning to get to know our communities and the people in the communities, that's when we make a difference. So the relationships to me are foundational to fixing the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm. Dave, let me just ask you, for your successor, what's your one piece of advice? Whoever that individual that steps into your chair role, what's your one piece of advice?
Go out and talk to people. And listen.
Great.
Important thing is actually not to go out and talk to people, it's to go out and listen to people.
Got it. Thank you. Terri, curious when again you hear from your colleagues in the panel right now, and anything that's coming up for you? What are you noticing for yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So for me, again, I think that message of relationships come up, and I think part of that is that underpinning is that we need to build trust so that we can really operate from that place of mutual respect. And that does take a bit of vulnerability, and it does take a bit of labor so that we can build those common languages so that we know how to talk to each other and know how to relate to one another. And I think when we do that in a good way, the action steps actually come so much easier and so much faster because we built that strong foundation.
Thanks, Terri. Ted, as a key leader who's driving policy at the provincial level, what do you think needs the most attention going forward, based on some of the comments you're hearing from your colleagues?
One of the things that I've taken to heart is the need for us to kind of seize the opportunity. And I think Terri referred to this, the fact that we're able to pivot and move very quickly in a number of areas to make some improvements as a result of the COVID crisis. I think that we need to continue and seize the opportunities that are in front of us to make improvements and not lose the momentum. I think that is absolutely essential right now.
Thanks, Ted.
Keep going.
Fiona, you talked about the journey that you're on, and I'm curious, when you think about your other CEO colleagues, what's the joint collective effort that you as CEOs can make? What's the biggest contribution from your perspective at that level?
Well, I think that increasingly we're all conscious as CEOs that geographic boundaries between the different health authorities aren't the thing that's important to people on the ground. In your community, you may not even know if you're in Northern Health or in Interior Health. You just know that this is your community, this is how you can get to a bigger community, this is what you need, and these are your local relationships. And so I think one of the really important things we do is that we are increasingly trying to do more and more is to ensure that we're working really closely together, that we are Team BC, and we're not divided and competing between different organisations. And the transport example is a good example of that, in terms of that requires every health organisation in BC, including regional health authorities, PHSA, Providence, if often those patients are coming to one of our tertiary sites, and we all collectively have to work together. And as a patient, you don't know who the paramedic, the ambulance personnel are, you don't know which health authority they're working for, and it doesn't matter to you. And that's how we need to ensure that we don't have people slipping between the gaps in those services.
Love that notion of we are Team BC. Thank you, Fiona. So as we kind of wind down, panel, I'm going to ask you to think about Dave's comment around really listening. And so to really listen, we have to ask powerful questions. What's the one powerful question you would like to leave the participants with as they go into their small table work following this session? What's that one powerful question that you would love people to generate dialogue and to encourage that deep listening that Dave has talked about? So maybe, Fiona, I'm going to start with you. You can give us your one powerful question.
I think that there's been some questions about already what can I do differently, and that's important for everyone to do, but there's also a question about what is not within my personal power to do. What do I need the system?
Sorry, Fiona, we're losing you a little bit. I think your bandwidth is a bit low. Why did I come back to you?
I think that we can, as a system, we've shown we can pivot during COVID. Sure.
Fiona, we're losing you. We'll come back to you just if you can check on your bandwidth. Ted, what's your one powerful question?
One powerful question. I was thinking while Fiona was speaking about what my one powerful question would be. I don't know. I think in following the theme that I just talked about. I mean, how will you present today? How will you positively navigate the discussions, and what will you take back to your community as a result of this?
Okay, thank you. The big how do you want to show up question. Thank you so much. Terri, let me turn it to you. What's the powerful question for our participants today?
So I think for me, the powerful question, it comes back down to equity in medicine, and how can we really harness social justice principles in order to achieve that. And kind of leaning on what Ted was saying around how are we going to show up, is this kind of, it does involve two things. So as Ray always says, there is no system, we are the system. So what are some personal things that we can do to address our own biases to ensure that we are promoting equity in the spaces around us? But then also, what are some system fail-safes and system processes that we can enact to ensure that we protect the most vulnerable in our population? Thanks.
Thank you, Terri. Dave, let me jump to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. You always throw everyone the hard question unexpectedly at the end, so thank you for that. What struck me listening to everyone is context matters. In other words, the geographical, the cultural context of where people and communities live. And what I see sometimes is it's a lack of understanding of that context that gets in the way of system change. So I guess my question is, how do we articulate those differences in our local contexts in a way that helps everyone understand and begins to help us as we try and solve the problems? I firmly believe local solutions are embedded locally, but we have to find a way of helping others understand our context. So how would we do that?
Wow, that's a powerful question. Thank you, Dave. Fiona, let's give this another shot. Jump in, please.
Thanks. I think we transformed the healthcare system in 2 weeks because of COVID, because of one overriding priority. What is the one overriding compelling thing that you would like us to transform our healthcare system again this time in this new normal?
Love that question. Crisp and concise and very provocative. Thank you so much. Panelists, on behalf of all participants, want to just acknowledge your perspectives, your wisdom, your experience. Thank you for starting us off today. And I encourage you to join into the rest of the dialogue. Fiona, I know you'll do your best, and thank you for being here as well. On that note, let me just do a quick check. Ray, is there anything you want to say as we wind down our panel conversation?
No, all good. Thanks very much. Great conversation.
Okay, thank you. So on that note, folks, let's get ready for having you now step back into your table work. We are starting with the community tables, and I'm going to encourage the community tables and the peer tables to take the reflections from our panel conversation and use those heat maps to see what nuances might be important for you to discuss as you continue to deep dive. And so we're going to have a community table first. There'll be a break after that, and then you'll go right into your peer tables from yesterday as well. And then we'll see you back again at 11:30 to do a reflections piece and to see what kind of actions we're emerging and we're committed to taking to make this stick and to make this a really practical outcome. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. Again, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, the phone lines are up and working, and you can also use the email option as well. This is your time to fine-tune your brainstorming from day one and start to think about how do we move to a place of practical action. The links are all there for you, and if you just give your facilitators a minute or two to get themselves in the room, at probably approximately 9:10, you should be good to go. So with that in mind, enjoy the rest of the morning. Thank you again for your attention today, and we look forward to seeing you back at around 11:30. Enjoy the rest of the morning.